Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2482. Today we are talking about genealogy, understanding the journeys that shaped generations. So we're going to be looking at immigration today and the secrets that can be unveiled in that, let's go see what secrets that we can find. So, excuse me. Many people think immigration records only show when somebody arrived in a country. You can also get that's the immigration. You can get immigration, beginning with an E, leaving that they're leaving, the leaving records. Not only can you get immigration records, you can also get immigration records. Immigration are when they arrive in a country. Immigration are when they leave a country. So you can get, there are out there, for every time somebody gets on a ship, there is a list of passengers and paperwork that goes with them leaving a country to go to another country. When they arrive in a country, there's a set of documents that are created that show them arriving in that country, and you can find out all sorts of information. So just remember, there are actually two sets of documents on shipping, leaving and arriving. So in reality, they can contain an incredible amount of information about a person's journey, life and journey. And yes, they do. Depending on the time period and the type of record, immigration documents may include, and this is why they are so important, full names and alternate spellings, because sometimes they will turn around and say, how else is it spelled? Ages or birth years, occupations, hometowns or villages, names of relatives left behind, names of relatives already living in the new country, like where are you going to be staying? Why are you coming to the country? Who are you going to be visiting with? Physical descriptions. They'll have their height, their weight, the height, approximate weight, hair color, eye color, skin color, are all noted on that as well when they talk about physical descriptions. Literacy status. Can they read? Can they write? Final destination, and names of ships and travel routes. And sometimes a single immigration record can unlock an entire branch of a family tree. Trust me, it can, because you could have family groups traveling together. It's not just dad leaving off to go explore the new country. He comes back and brings the family out with him. So he's got himself, his wife, and their kids. It may also reveal the exact hometown overseas. Previously unknown relatives may be traveling with them. Maiden names for any brides. They might have their maiden name rather than their married name, or might have both. Clues to migration patterns. Where have they been traveling from and to? Connections between families traveling together. So you might have 2 or 3 families on the same ship that all have different last names. There might be 3 families that have different last names, and they may have different last names because it could be the parents with the younger children traveling with 2 of their married daughters and their families. So everybody has different last names. So you might find that out as well. These records also remind us that behind every document was a real person making a life-changing journey. So it's not just facts and figures. These people were on the ship from this time to this time, and this is who they were. No, it's showing us that they're making a life-changing journey. People leaving behind familiar places, loved ones, languages, and traditions in search of opportunity, safety, or a better future. Genealogy is not just about dates and documents. It's about understanding the journeys that shaped generations. Other immigration records that you could get, like if they apply for naturalization. Those naturalization forms, especially in the US, the naturalization forms, because in the late 1800s through to the early 1900s, could only be unless the wife was a widow. She would be on the same naturalization. So when the father would go and apply, the man would go and apply for naturalization, and in his document would be listed his wife and any children that he had. They would all be covered under his naturalization. So if he was approved for naturalization, so were the rest of his family that were listed on that document, his wife and his children. And the cool part about their document is that would turn around and say that this is his name. He was born on such and such a date in and wherever he was born. So you got all of his birth information there, who his parents were or are, because you don't know if they were still alive or not. I would have the parents' names in there as well, and where they were from, and then who he married, if he was married, who he married, and her maiden name, and her parents' names, and the date and place that she was born. See how much information we're getting, and we're just in the first top part of the naturalization form. Then you come down, and then there's any children that they have had. So any children that they have had that are with them, full names, their birth dates, and where they were born. So now you've got not just mum and dad, you've got their parents as well, and you've got their children. You've got 3 generations right there like that on one form. And I will also talk about his occupation as well, and where he came from, where he's going, and where he's living, and where he is currently living at the time of applying for naturalization. And it will have, and on most of them, I have seen that there's a photograph of the person applying for naturalization. So some people might never have seen pictures of their grandparents, their great-grandparents, or anything else, but there might be a picture of their grandfather or their great-grandfather on that naturalization form. They stick a photograph on the back of it, I think it is. It's got their physical description, height, approximate weight, their eye color, their hair color, their skin color. So there's a lot of information that you can learn on these documents about your families. If they, and people came from all over. If you think about it, the mixing pot, people just turn and say, "Oh yeah, but you're a foreigner." Yeah, and so were you at one point. And there's all these tales that then go out about it, and it's just absolutely wonderful and amazing. And this is why I love what I do. I love what I do, because you can find all these documents, and I have on my checklist to check for these different documents for different family members. When did they first arrive in the US? Let's go check their immigration records. Let's go have a look at, see if they got naturalized. So immigration plus naturalization, and you get a whole wealth of information between those documents. And it tells the story. It tells where they've come from. And you can look at the time that they left that land and go and do research in history to see what was going on at that point in time that forced them or made them want to leave their country and go to another country. What happened? What was going on at the time? Was it political persecution? Was it religious persecution? Did they just decide, nothing seemed to be going on? They just wanted to have new opportunities and things. And, in New Zealand, the British government offered to help subsidize the cost of families moving from England to New Zealand to help colonize New Zealand. So there were those sorts of things going on as well. Were your family part of the colonization of a country? The same happened in Australia. Yes, Australia did have a lot of convicts in there. It was a convict place that people were sent down. But then there was also those where they turned around and said, "We want you to help colonize this country. Get your butts down there. We'll help subsidize it." And so there's 2 sorts of people in Australia. And for tracing the family tree, will tell you which is which. One is descended from convicts and one is descended from the colonies. So you got to go in and find the stories and figure that out. So it's very interesting to read some of these stories and things. And then you might get a person who has a very interesting immigration story or naturalization story, and there may have been a book written about it. They may appear in a book because of it. You never know. They might have been like one of the first settlers or something, and so there's a book written about there might be a book written about the first settlers, or the first to settle in this particular, if you're in the States, the first person to, the first families to pioneer this particular state and county. I've got a client who can trace back to her family being pioneers for a particular county in Indiana, along with a whole bunch of other famous stuff going on in there too. And they were descended from one particular famous family, well, thought they were. And I said, yeah, he never had any kids. She said, thank goodness for that. I said, but there could be a distant relationship there where they could be distant cousins. And she says, I can deal with that. But in her own family tree, we just found incredible story after incredible story after incredible story, all documented. We didn't have to if and R about any of it. We found passages from books. We found books on the genealogy of the family. We found newspaper articles that were actually written by the person that was about. Like we found this newspaper article by her third great-grandfather. It was actually in 3 parts. And it was really, really interesting reading it because it was his perspective of where he grew up, who he grew up in the shadow of, who he tried to emulate, how he met his wife. And basically it was he decided to marry her because nobody else would, because she wasn't the most attractive looking woman. Yes, it did actually say that in the article. And he was writing this story when he was 80 or 83, somewhere around there. He wrote it for his I think it was for his 80th birthday. He wrote this 3-part newspaper article about how he came to be in this particular county, and the story was in there. The story was in the article about how they moved from where they were in Kentucky up into Indiana and helped settle. I want to say Jackson. No, it wasn't Jackson. Jefferson County? Might have been Jefferson County. Began with a J. And how they helped settle this county, and how he was there for a year before he went back to Kentucky to bring his family back up. Very interesting stories in there, and they just go on and on and on. And it was all documented. And one of the great grandmothers in there got kidnapped by Indians, and so her story is in there about her getting kidnapped by Indians, and how her husband spent 20 years searching for her, finally found out where she was, and so went after him. At the same time, she was released. She was sold into slavery in Canada, and this French doctor bought all these female slaves that had been all these female slaves and released them, and she was one of them. And by the time she got back home, she got there to find out her husband had left just a few days beforehand, because he found out where she was, so he went off to get her. So she got on a horse to go follow and came across his funeral. Yes. There's a little village. We don't know where. The article says we don't know. It was in Virginia. They don't know where in Virginia this took place. And so she came across him as they were having a funeral for her husband, who had succumbed to a fever the day before. And so she got to look upon his face before they completed the burial. And then she went back home and got reacquainted with her son, who was a year old when she left. And now there's this 21-year-old young man there that she missed his entire life. Can you imagine some of the struggles that those people went through doing stuff like this? So yeah, there's all sorts of interesting stories out there. You just got to go and try something and see what happens. And like immigration records can tell you a big story about families and stuff. And then you add to that naturalization records as well. And you've got a more complete picture of this family. So don't be afraid to go and look for things. Archives are a great place. Like, you've got state archives if they've got stuff online. If you've got national archives, they've got stuff online. Go on and have a look. And some of the records, they will have been digitized, and you'll be able to see them online. Some may be digitized, but you can't see them online. You actually have to go to the archive to see them. And some records have not been digitized at all. And this is all based on the copyrights of the materials. And some of them you actually have to be there in person to see the actual record. They won't copy it. They can't copy it because of copyrights and that sort of stuff. So it's very interesting. And going looking for this stuff is just so much fun. It's just picking up all these little clues along. You get to play detective in your own family story. How cool is that? But anyway, that's me for today. I'm out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konera.